Greetings and welcome to the Dark Enlightenment. I'd like to speak to you about a word that has become the greatest political boogeyman since communists during the Cold War. A word you may even have been called if you write of Chairman Mao or simply support Donald Trump. A word that is used by almost all but understood by none who do. Fascism. The word itself conjures images of uniformed soldiers in the streets checking papers, of mass graves, of crowds of brainwashed followers cheering for a brutal, murderous dictator, of tanks rolling through the streets and of secret police dragging off distance never to be seen or heard from again. Funny, isn't it? How communism doesn't always conjure images of mass forced starvation, of gulags and of barbed wired walls manned by soldiers with machine guns, not to keep people out, but to keep people in. Funny, isn't it, that liberalism doesn't conjure images of the bombing of civilians, or the complete annihilation of cities like Hiroshima, of moral decay, of rampant nihilism, of over-medicated society or domestic surveillance programs, or of mass incarceration, with the United States having the largest prison population in history. Or how about of near constant war, the world wars, the Korean War, the Vietnam War, the Cold War, the proxy wars, the wars in the Middle East, the war on terror, even the war on the country's own citizens with the war on drugs, where non-violent offenders are dragged away in chains for non-violent offenses. Or how about of rampant corruption, where our leaders are lobbied not with convincing arguments but by the almighty dollar, by foreign governments and international corporations who consider a politician to be a better investment than of a factory in America. Perhaps the reason that the mention of democratic liberalism or communism doesn't conjure such images for us is that we have been so well trained by liberal institutions, foremost being the education system and the mass media, that we, like Pavlov's dogs, are triggered to react with hatred and disgust when we hear the word fascism, and yet react so positively like a well-trained dog to the word communism, or so positively to liberal democracy without knowing why. Perhaps, like Pavlov's dogs, we are nothing more than well-trained animals taught to consume, and that we are free without question. But that is a thought too dark, too conspiratorial to entertain. After all, we are free in all the ways the citizens under Pinochet were not. We are the masters of our own destinies in all the way the Italians under Mussolini were not. We are free to speak, act, and most importantly, consume in all the ways the ancient Romans were not. Fascists were and remain to this day sexist, homophobic, racist, anti-Semitic, chauvinistic, hate-mongers, and every other pejorative in a liberal's vocabulary. Thugs who use brute force to oppress speech and the arts, to use the government to control the economy. Or at least this is the narrative that we have all swallowed so willingly over all these decades, and that we've expanded this labor further and further until it is nothing more than a pejorative used to slander one's political opponents. Where liberal capitalists like Donald Trump can be called a fascist and millions will agree. Where libertarians and free speech activists are physically attacked as fascists. Where a socially liberal gay Jew with a black boyfriend is called a fascist, a racist, and a homophobe, and prevented from speaking at universities. Today it is anti-Semitic to speak out against Israeli lobbying of our foreign policy, or against international finance. It is hate-mongering to refuse to apologize for being white. Today the word fascist means nothing, unless it means I hate you and I don't know why. I have no arguments and I've run out of labels. Trump has been called a fascist so many times and by so many people and so many liberal media outlets, political opponents, and brainwashed partisans that it will take historians centuries to tally them all, despite the fact that none of these critics can actually point to or describe precisely what makes Donald Trump a fascist. So perhaps it's time that we discuss this word that we have all dismissed on unfounded grounds that we do not fully understand. So let's dive into the actual characteristics of fascism. Well, first and foremost, there's nationalism. Then virtue ethics, especially the ideals of heroism and duty to something greater than oneself. Love of one's people, industriousness, respect for tradition, and belief in the spiritual over the material. And the belief that individual success should not be achieved through exploitation or at the expense of society. And the belief that we are stronger united. So perhaps liberals are right when they call conservatives and right-wingers fascists. For what patriotic American does not love his country? What patriotic American does not loathe the devastation wrought on our economy by international finance, and the enslavement of the unborn to massive national debt? What patriotic American does not hold in high esteem our military heroes and honor their courage and sacrifice? What patriotic American does not believe that God and country comes before money? How about a belief in law and order, respect for the family and the church, and appreciation for history, and opposition to communism and internationalism? Are these things evil? And why has fascism become the ultimate boogeyman? No doubt because of the gas chambers and the mass graves in the Second World War. But for those of you who are sympathetic or indifferent to communism, look in the mirror. For you believe in a system that has killed 10 times as many of its own people in the 20th century alone than all of the fascist governments and all of the religious systems put together. Why is fascist evil, persona non grata, yet 1 out of 5 liberal arts professors are openly communist? The fact is that all political systems, all religious systems, all systems created by man are corruptible and have perpetrated atrocities in the name of God or the secular God equality. All have blood on their hands. So if you think a death count enables you to use fascist as an epithet to avoid debate, then your intellectual integrity is in question. Now, I've stopped debating the label of fascist when conversing with leftists a long time ago, having been called it more times than I can count. It simply is not constructive argument to be had. Those who use it have no idea what they even mean by it, so why should I bother? Why should I bother saying that I am not and never have been a fascist, despite it being the truth? As though I should feel obligated to subject myself to this modern inquisition. Neither should you. Because you may in fact have more in common with a fascist than you may think. So I hope you'll wear this label with pride as I do. And that's it for today.